is an astonishing visual artist and does amazing things with watercolor. Welcome everyone to Service Place. We tonight are here to celebrate our current resident, and one of the ways that we are able to interact with our artists and also run as an organization is through the very generous work of our volunteers, but also as a reminder, we are not an endowed organization, so we do rely on donations and gifts and sustaining memberships, and all that is available on our website, searlesplace.org. Even if you're watching us from afar away, you can go to searlesplace.org and find that link on our website. And then the volunteer side of it is, with respect to our artists and residents, we pair them with what we call a community host. And this person often may have some common interest with the art that resident does, but they're also connected to the community in a certain way. And we were very lucky this month because Maja had expressed an interest in doing some work in libraries, and Diane Rice, who is her community host, has done a lot of work in libraries as well. So it kind of matched right away, like, hey, I think this is going to be a good thing. But Diane has a lot of interest in a lot of different genres, so she's very available to lots of different kinds of artists. But she has spent way more time with Maja than I have this month, so I would prefer to have Diane come up and give a little introduction to Maja, and then we will hear from Maja. And then following Maja's presentation, I'll come back up to lead a little bit of a Q&A, and then we'll have a little more time to eat some food and mingle and ask questions. But if you do want to also mention that she has a zine available here, Against the Odds, and just see Marnie if you're interested in purchasing one of those during the night, and I think Maja's even signing them, so there you go. All right, here's Diane.
I'm here tonight because I'm so delighted to say that I've had a wonderful month with Maja. We've spent so many different times going to library programs, the dog park. We've done many artistic things together. We saw Art in the Park and Japan Day, and I have enjoyed every minute of her company. She offers a very global perspective of the world. She grew up in Poland, 6 years. She's been in this country now, and she studied global medicine and wanted to come to this country and learn a little bit more about the graphic part of the U.S. So she applied for this residency. It's her very first residence. And one of the fun things that we did also was go to the James Castle house for his birthday. And it's very wonderful that her genre, her choice of media is graphic medicine. So not only is she writing her own autobiography, but she's writing experiences that deal with grief or loss or trauma, something that you kind of want to write through. And by doing a little zine or booklet and drawing it, it can put you in touch with that part of your loss or your healing. So I've had the joy of experiencing that with both my kids and then one of my friends. When you have somebody that's ill, for instance, it can be very rewarding to have that kind of experience. And her husband, Tomo, is watching their dog, Hollister, and she's delighted to be able to see her tomorrow. So welcome.
Thank you all very much for coming, and thank you for a lovely introduction, Jody and Diane. I see many familiar faces, which makes me very happy. My name is Maja Miłkowska-Shibata, and I'm a graphic medicine artist, but also a medical interpreter and independent researcher. I'm currently working on a graphic memoir that brings together topics of growing up with a disability, but also growing up in a dysfunctional family with alcohol, and building a career in health sciences, and also healing through creativity, writing, and art. So that's the project that I've been working on during my residency at Searles Place. And before I became a comic artist, and got interested in graphic medicine, which, as you can see, uses comics to explore health, illness, but also experience of healthcare, including both physical and mental health. I was just a regular public health professional, not really interested in creating anything besides academic papers and research proposals. So what changed? During the pandemic, I found myself quite burned out professionally, and also extremely isolated. As Diane said, I had just moved to the US, and I didn't know anybody besides my husband. So books naturally became my refuge. I started visiting my local library, and there I discovered nonfiction graphic novels that deal with topics of health, among other things. And through this experience, I also started reading more graphic novels on health-related topics. And I was very lucky that one of the first books that I got and read was this book, Taking Turns, by M.K. Serwick, and you can have a look. In this book, M.K., who is a nurse, shares her experiences of taking care of patients with AIDS in Chicago in 1990s. And I had never read anything like it, such a vulnerable narrative from someone that is a healthcare professional. So I was very intrigued and started reading more graphic novels from the genre of graphic medicine. And I also, after reading the book, decided, because I knew, but despite having no background in creative writing or art, I knew that after reading this memoir, I want to create my own about my transitions, my career transitions and changes in public health. But as I started drawing and writing, I soon realized that I have to address some deeper issues like my father's alcoholism, for instance. So luckily for me, 3 months later, after reading the book, the 2022 Graphic Medicine Conference, which the author of this book helped organize, was taking place in Chicago. So naturally, I attended the conference. I met MK as well, and I was able to discover this entire world of very generous people who share very vulnerably about their health journeys and recovering from all sorts of trauma through this visual format. And over the past 3 years, I've connected to a wonderful community of people. I was able to teach graphic medicine to students of all ages and also publish my own comics. And in my experience, creating autobiographical comics can be very therapeutic. It's also very challenging, especially at the beginning, because we need to learn how to communicate and articulate emotions and feelings, and we need to sit with difficult memories. But it's very much a rewarding process. And I've learned that through this art of creating, I was really able to reclaim my story and connect to others, and that's what really matters. So for this exhibition, I decided to show pieces that will, I feel, best introduce me and my personal story and some of my personal milestones. So here you'll see a piece that talks about my father's alcoholism. Here is another one that explores the circumstances of my premature birth and how a staph infection in infancy led to my disability. This excerpt tells a story of my surgeries and how those experiences, early experiences as a child and patient, really influenced my career path in public health. And finally here, I wanted to share my creative awakening and share the story of how I became interested in graphic medicine and this transformation from researcher to artist. And if you can turn here, I would like to talk a little bit more about my process of making comics. And I borrowed this process from another public health professional, Meredith Lee Vormer, who works for the Seattle Department of Public Health and deals with emergency response and preparedness. And she often uses this form of a table to prepare her comics used for educational materials for the general public. And in the first column, you will have your page, and then the second column will reflect your panel, and then the third column will be used to finalize your text, prepare captions and dialogue, and the fourth one would be an image that you can include some reference images there to guide your comic making process. And the way I usually approach making comics is that whenever I have a story identified, I try to divide it into pages and use this more well-known narrative arc of introduction, climax, and resolution to make sure that I give enough space to introduce the context of the story, but also have enough space to show what actually happened. And then finally, I share some of the lessons learned and the take-home message for the audience. So after that, after my story is mapped out, I can approach populating my table. And here you have an example of one of the spreads. And this is the spread that is the last one in chapter 1 of my graphic memoir in progress, where I compare the situation of growing up in a home with alcohol to a burning house, where everyone pretends not to notice the problem, but for a child it feels suffocating. So this is a little bit easier because it's an entire spread. Normally I would divide my pages into panels. So here you can see I have my page number and just one panel. And when I work on text, I usually start from that part. And since I'm working with images and text, I need to make sure that my captions and dialogues will not hide any significant visual elements. And once everything is mapped out, I can start penciling my sketch. And here is this. This is how a pencil sketch looks like. And afterward, I can move to inking my page. And I do it by hand as well, which is my favorite part. And afterwards, I scan my sketch into Procreate, which is a software used on iPads. And I color digitally because often I am too afraid that I might accidentally ruin a good sketch. And it also looks good in print when submitting comics for publications. And so that's my process. If you have more questions about it, I'll be happy to answer those. And to end my talk, I would like to encourage you to tell your own stories. If you're going through something difficult right now, try to write about it. And then try to come up with an image that could fit to that narrative. And after creating your story with words and images, notice how you feel afterwards. In my experience, reclaiming your story can really take you to unexpected places. And being here in Garden City at Surreal's Place is the best example of that. So thank you so much for your attention to today and for coming. And thank you so much for Surreal's Place for making this residency possible for me. And again, I encourage you to share your stories, and because that's a sign of bravery, and you never know who might relate to it or will resonate with it. Because to me, the best experience that I've had so far is when people approach me and tell me that my story made an impact, and because they have gone through similar experiences. So thank you.
And keep you here a little longer. Thank you, Maja. I wonder if you would talk a little bit about, before we open the floor up for questions, was your first artist in residency experience. Could you just say a little bit about what you thought it would be and what it turned out to be, or something like that? Like, how did you experience, because we don't often have someone who's having their first residency, so that's kind of special for us.
Right, so for me, as a beginner artist, I often tend to romanticize creative retreats and residencies, thinking that I'll be spending this wonderful time more like a hermit and focus on creating, and that's all I will be focusing on. However, this experience was very different. I was able to connect with so many people and see so many things, and I feel like I still haven't seen half of what this community has to offer, and I have not expected that I'll be so generously welcomed. And I think Sorel's place is quite unique because you offer so many opportunities for artists for exposure, which I haven't had before. And not every residency will ask artists to prepare an exhibition or prepare a talk or have so many events in the community. So I found this residency to be quite unique in this respect.
And I haven't checked the stats, but Maja may be our resident who has had the most community events during her month. She did an open house happy hour at Old Speak, where they've been displaying her work all month on their chalkboard that's across from the books on trauma. Or near them. So little connection there. She's been to 2 libraries. She had a workshop here, and Andy was here for that workshop, as well as Diane. And then the event tonight. Of all those events, is there one or something that happened at one of those? I mean, this one is still young, so we still have a chance. Is there something that happened or that was meaningful, especially meaningful to you, or that you'll remember?
I think I enjoyed the most the events at local libraries because I've been surrounded over the past 3 years by people that also work on their stories and know graphic medicine very well, but interacting with others made me aware that so many people still don't know what graphic medicine is, and it made me see my art anew. And it just helps for me to remember that for many people it's still new, so it's worth introducing to different audiences and to different people and explaining what it is and promoting it even more.
So did you connect with someone who it really lit up for them, or? Oh
yes, I think Susan is the best example.
Oh, okay. Susan's the best example.
Everything good.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I guess we should clarify. Thank you, Lou. All right, great. Let's talk aesthetics just really quick. So I am one of those people who had never heard of graphic medicine. I don't read graphic novels particularly. So this has all been very new for me. But one thing that I noticed and I'm curious about, and just looking around the room, there are sections that are very colorful, but then you have this one panel here that's almost entirely black and white, except for what looks like an actual photograph. So what kind of decision-making goes into how you decide something like that? Is this going to be black and white, or is it going to be in color?
In general, I think I would like my memoir to be in color, but as I learn new skills when it comes to drawing, I also experiment with different color palettes and different styles. So at this very beginning of my journey of creating a memoir, I was already telling some of you, I'm not used to seeing my work in print. I'm used to working on fast drafts on first drafts in quite a fast way. And maybe after a year, when I feel like I have a good understanding of what the memoir will be, I can then now try to polish some pages. So I know that these pages will look very differently in the end, but as I'm learning now, it's time for me to experiment. And there are some pieces like, for instance, the one about mushrooms that I really cared for the story to be done in color. But there are other examples like this one that I wanted to focus more on the maybe the minimal aesthetic of, and like the also crude experience of a hospital that I just decided to execute it in black and white.
Mm-hmm. And are there panels up on the wall right now that were created this month, or is that work that's in your computer waiting to germinate more, and this is work that you did earlier?
Generally, all of them were done earlier. However, some of them were just pencil sketches. Oh. So I was able to, actually for this residency, I pushed myself to create this larger zine. Probably I wouldn't have done that without this residency. And it helped me to polish many of the pages from the zine that you can hold today.
Oh, okay. That's this one.
Right.
Yeah, okay. This is the premiere, the launch of
it
Against
is.
the Odds. Okay. Okay, what questions in the gallery here? I know Veko is one of our prime question makers, but let's start with Elizabeth.
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm so impressed that you just jumped right in and did this, not having done it before. It does take so much courage, as you said, and telling your own story also. That's kudos to you. So my question is, when you first are mapping it out, on the table, and you're saying this is the page, this is the panel, this is what's being said, and this is the image. When you put it all down, are you writing in the text that will be there first, or are you doing a picture first, or how do you understand and how do you use the economy of the small space that you have for this, telling of the story with text? Mm-hmm. How does that work?
So,
what comes first?
Right. I always start from writing because I feel like if the writing is good, it will bring the flow of the entire piece together. If I have to still work on writing, I would rather do that first. But then, as I also work with those tables that you can see over there, I try to think of where to locate those text boxes on the page and try to, if possible, in comics we have this rule that the fewer words, the better. Mm-hmm. So then I try to limit my words if I feel like that's what the piece needs. Right.
I mean, Elizabeth is also a screenwriter, a novelist and a screenwriter, but I feel like this is on the edge of screenwriting almost,
100%.
isn't it?
It's
like you look at these panels and it's like the opening of the movie, where it's like the camera's coming into the Polish countryside, and then you see this family walking along, and then you come in and get some dialogue, and I love this panel too, where it's just a phone ringing, and then we hear the voice coming from the phone. I want to say Daniel, but I don't think that's right. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. If I remember correctly, when you were over here, you mentioned that inking was your favorite part of the process. Why?
Because it's analog way of capturing things, and I still very much enjoy drawing by hand, but then I have to eventually move to Procreate. But doing things by hand, using pencil and ink, it's actually my favorite part because it's tactile and analog, and that's the part where I can make mistakes, because then I can clean them up later in the software that I use.
Are you left-handed or right-handed?
I am.
You're left-handed. Yeah. Okay.
Which makes for a lot of smudges.
Yeah.
In terms of the medical aspects, that in this case, the psychological healing. Mm-hmm. So you start with words, and then you draw pictures, and then they're colored in. And in each one of those phases, there are different parts of the brain being used. Mm-hmm. have you felt a different working in the psychological soul dimension in those different phases?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this question. I feel like the preparatory part before actually sketching is the most important one, is the most also taxing. It's the most emotional part. Once I'm done with that, I feel like then inking and coloring is just a meditative state. And at this point, I'm just happy to get my emotions on the page. I'll have time to go through them again and edit later. And also, based on feedback from the community that I also get, I can always improve them. But yeah, I'm more focused now on getting this first draft out. But I think the most important, the most psychologically taxing part is the preparatory part, when I actually do some free writing and it's brewing in my head before I can actually turn it into a drawing.
If I might add, a very unusual thing happened for me today. I was at a coffee place downtown, and there was a young man, and he had behind him a book about Carl Jung. I'm very fond of Jung's work. And he was there, and he had a sketch pad, and he was just using he had all of his colors out, and he was coloring rather frantically.
Mm-hmm.
The whole page was covered. And I mentioned to him, I said there was, how ironic that there was going to be this event tonight, and I tried describing it to him. And we stayed engaged over the course of time. He came back to me several times to the table. I was away from him. He was very upset. He had been very upset. Something about Cyril's place, whatever. It did not make any sense to me. But what I saw was somebody dealing with a lot of emotional stuff with all this color, all these lines, no figures,
Mm-hmm.
just he was really processing and how that could be used in a way that could help. Obviously, this is a lot more than cartoons might be able to handle,
Mm-hmm.
but I thought, what a dimension of assistance this could be for self-work, like diary. Some therapists have people do written assignments or reading various things and then discussing with the therapist. So this is another very rich forum.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a question you have to ask yourself, is how much of my work is just for me, or is any of it really just for you? And then there's the work that is to be presented to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you sometimes think, I'm going to put this to the public and then realize, actually, I'm going to take that back and keep
Yeah.
it?
So I feel like this entire work is primarily for me. It's like a form of self-prescribed art therapy. That's what you mentioned, Lou. But also, I am willing to be vulnerable because I feel like that's what people also look for, and that's how we connect with one another. And ultimately, I don't know whether my memoir will be eventually published. So I treat it first and foremost as a personal project. But then I also am very happy and lucky to have this community of artists within the Graphic Medicine International Collective that I can test ideas and see if some resonate more than the other. But of course, we're talking about a memoir, so it has to be selective. There'll be things and topics and situations and conversations that will not make it to the memoir, but I still would benefit from drawing it out if it's just for myself.
I really like the panel that's like kind of like, or maybe it's just one. It's the panel where you talk about being isolated
Mm-hmm.
as a child, and then the gifts from that experience that you gained. Like at the time it was difficult, but then you gained some gifts as a result of that. And so I was wondering, do you kind of have a process where you look for the meaning of things? Like, do you look for the meaning to end on that, like on purpose? Do you have like kind of a cadence that you're aiming for? Or does it just kind of organically happen?
I think I always try to, because I'm still learning how to be a better storyteller, I tend to leave the meaning of a story and the take-home message at the very end. Because I also sometimes, or oftentimes actually, work with shorter stories. So I hope that each story can actually have something meaningful in it. But I think the way I work, I also usually create pages at the beginning that give a lot of context and are based on a lot of research. But then when I zoom into personal stories, so it's kind of zooming out, zooming in, I tend to leave that part with lessons or meaning when I talk about personal experiences.
You mentioned that you're not used to having your work printed, you're used to seeing it on the screen. Seeing it like this up on the wall, is there something about that affects you in a certain way, that here it is printed on paper and hanging and light shining on it?
Right. Well, I'm also curious to know how you feel about those images.
Yeah.
I see that since they were done at different times, to me they're not visually coherent. That's something that I would like to work more on, right? To have this consistency, at least that's what I see as an artist. But I'm curious about your experience of the pages.
Well, we spoke a month ago and I asked you how you knew how to draw, and you said, I don't know how to draw. Well, it looks like you do know how to draw. And you told me about, a YouTube site that you learned from, and I've been there since, and I'm looking at that. And I will say that I think it is totally coherent. I understand what each of these things are, and I think that, like you do the writing first, and I mean, as a biased writer, I would say the story is crucial. I mean, as long as the images are coherent, and I think they're more than coherent, they're really accessible, and I mean that in the best possible way. That you're good to go. This is good stuff.
Well, we have a visual storyteller right behind you, so let's see if
Well, I really appreciate your talk, and I really appreciate you sharing this, the behind. I think that's very helpful and a lot of cerebral thing there. So my question goes in relation to your work. And the way that you draw it seems to have consistent horizontal lines and vertical lines, the same contour. It appears in all of the works, in all of the panels. So it seems like if it's a tragic story, it's created in a safe place, very, very secure, very safe. So there's kind of some sort of comfort that you have created for yourself. But then I wonder, what does the photograph does do to this safe place? Because the photograph sometimes functions as evidence, as a fact that this is not idealized. So you said that how does the story make you feel? So I wonder if you could talk about how does the photograph, once it's inserted into your safe place, what does that do to you as a storyteller or as a person?
So someone who works on a memoir, memoir authors have to constantly kind of prove to the reader or gain their trust. They can trust the narrator, the author, that the story they're telling is actually true. And for me, articles or like using archival document like this one, it's an article from a local newspaper, or using photographs is another way of providing evidence, as you said, Veiko, that would confirm my story. But also I feel like there are certain things like photographs, for instance, that just bring so much authenticity to the story. And they are very personal, and that's what I really care about in my stories, for them to feel personal. That's why I also use my handwriting in the form of a font that I made from my handwriting, So I feel like for me, using photographs and documents serves as an evidence, but also brings more intimacy to the story.
Are you pushing the graphic novelists in that respect? I mean, is that at all controversial to include actual photographs?
Oh no, actually, I took inspiration from Rose Chast's "Can We Talk About Something More Pleasant," where she talks about caring for her aging parents, and at the end of the book, there are photographs. She wanted to show how badly cluttered the space that her parents lived in was. So instead of drawing it, I think it was just much more powerful to include pictures of that clutter. And I think it serves its own purpose.
Yeah, okay.
Kind of following up on that idea of mixed medium, for the whole memoir, obviously you're still developing it, so it isn't finished, but have you decided if you're going to go in all color for it, or if you're going to flip between that and black and white, like for effect on different sections? Or?
I think I'm gonna go with color because also I need to enjoy this process, and I enjoy coloring very much. But I'm often asked when I show my work and people see that it's so colorful, is it going to be for a young audience? And the answer is rather no. But maybe that's something that I want to work on too. I am also new when it comes to working with color. I would like to learn how to color better. So maybe, or use maybe limited color palettes to be able for the colors to bring even more meaning. But for now, I color based on what I feel is right. But that's something to work on as well.
Jason, did you have something?
Oh, yeah. So I noticed, I don't know if the panels are going to sequence the same way as the book, but I just know that Jody anchored us over here and kind of went like this with his hand, and so there I went, right? And so starting over here was interesting because, like, you bring it up to a boil right away, right? It's this story about my father and the alcoholism, you know. And then, yet there's this duality that happens where you're also kind of structuring how you integrate through those four. And so I left that panel not wondering if each one was going to be a little stop along the book and how you end up integrating this, you know, from an idea and a sketch and a caption, right? But it didn't. Almost like how a movie can start and be like with this intense scene, and then 3 years later, you know, and then it kind of brings you in. Like all of a sudden here we were, you know, in this place where you came from, and then your childhood and the mushroom picking, you know, like, and then the statement about your dad and a sense of pride that you had in him, that, you know. So like you've got this vulnerability going, and then you come into this story, and like to me, since you were asking what we thought about the picture, the black and white makes a whole lot of sense because like you have this informational, like experiential over here, and so you have this color, you know, because it's the artist's memory, you know, that is we're seeing, and then but over here, this is very much talking about a mechanical part of your story, you know, so it didn't really need to be imbued with color, you know, because it was so functional, you know, and yet, you know, here you were surviving and or you know experiencing your way through it, but the contrast was pretty neat, I thought, and I liked the color photo because I did think that it landed this like almost like forensic authenticity, you know, to it, like you say, credibility, if you will, or whatever, factual, and so anyway, this start, was this intentional?
Well, I wanted to give you a glimpse into my process, but this particular story, the mushroom story, is the story that opens the book and opens chapter 1. So I wanted to signal the problems at home, but I didn't want to go much into detail because as a storyteller, I'm learning also how to not to give out everything at the very beginning. But I really didn't want the story to be about my father. So I'll be coming back to the story about him in chapter 4, and then closing in chapter 8 when I'll be talking about going through therapy and as an adult child of an alcoholic. and how that experience impacted me and how I see the situation at home now when he's gone, and also his story and reasons why he drank. But I will go back to it way later as I'm still learning how to process it. But it's an intentional that I want to start with signaling some issues, but then come to explaining them later. Because in retrospect, when I was young and struggling, for instance, with mental health, I didn't really know that it was because of my upbringing. But now I'm fully aware of it, and it's kind of like it's telling the story with how I learn about my coping mechanisms as well.
I mean, the irony of the firehouse on top, you know, the people that would run into a building and save you, and yet here you are right up on, you know what I mean? Like, it was, the intensity was, I mean, the momentum right off the bat was big.
Thank you.
Do you mean that your father has passed?
Yes, 10 years ago. Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that that's important for you to be able to do this work now? Would it be different if you were living?
For sure, yeah. It's a little bit easier now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're gonna close our formal part of the Q&A and the talk now, but Maya's obviously in the house still. So, if some of you have some observations, but don't feel comfortable speaking in front of a group, but just want to share them with her one-on-one, please take the time to do that. Please, there's still a lot of food over there, so help yourself to some. If you had savory earlier, you can have sweet now, or if you had sweet, go back to savory, whatever you want. And thank you again for being a part of the Searles Place community.